Hi there. This is PT McNiff from the Long Take Review podcast, and you are listening to the Rebel Base Card podcast. Great pull, kid.
There's only one way to say this. You messed up. You blew it. You goofed.
Jedi Pop, that's like 3 different ways.
You've seen the show, and like us, you have questions.
Ooh, that was a good one, but try this one on for size.
No question should be left off your list.
Whoa. I got a crazy theory, but hear me out.
But you better have some spares.
Oh, that was one of mine. All right, let's do this instead.
With me, as always, is my friend and Cards Squadron winger.
This is Greg Cass, a.k.a. Ion Cannon.
We've recorded at home and across the U.S.
Last summer, we were from the Boston Common. This week, we're in Chicago.
This is day 3 of celebration.
The show has had many names, but the purpose is the same. Let's share some time at the table.
Ding ding, it's time for breakfast.
Welcome to the Breakfast Pack, a Rebel Base Card micro podcast series. A returning Rebel Base Card podcast series that asks more questions than it answers. Today on Rebuilding the Breakfast, number 88. You like that, huh? We're talking about the first 2 parts of Rebuilding the Galaxy, which premiered on Disney Plus way back Friday, September 13th. Because you know what? It's a long time till Skeleton Crew. And in which case, you can hear in the background, with me once again is my co-host and Card Squadron winger, Gregory Cass from IonCannon.com. Greg, good to see you again as we kind of gotten started into the fall.
Yes, good to see you as well. It feels like ages ago that we were talking about Acolyte, and had some bad news about Acolyte since we last spoke, which still kind of stings. But I'm glad there's a little something here as a little treat on our way to Skeleton Crew, like you said.
It is kind of interesting, and as the threads and things, as the news as it started to trickle out, and of course, any news on Acolyte breeds YouTubers like no tomorrow. Acolyte went over budget, and so of course, a lot of fingers pointing and things like that. But at the end of the day, I would say, when I went back and listened. When you go back and listen to our podcasts on it, I think, and I think others as well, I think there was a lot of good that was there. There's a lot we liked. And, I don't necessarily think that Disney's not paying us for sure. So, I guess that's what happens when you don't go on YouTube is people don't people don't come after you for saying you're a shill and you're taking money from Disney or getting product or anything like that. But I would say, overall, I thought it was a good experience.
Absolutely. I was really hoping for a season 2. It's such a different TV landscape than we used to enjoy, right? 2 of my favorite sitcoms of all time, The Office and Parks and Recreation. I tell people if you're going to watch those shows, skip the first season. Like they got a little time to find themselves, to figure out exactly what the dynamics were going to be. And then they turned into incredible shows, and we're just not in a place where shows get the benefit of the doubt, especially when you're as expensive as The Acolyte appears to have been. And, I do think reviews were mixed, kind of still taking away the kind of we were always going to hate it because we just don't like things where women are the protagonists, which Star Wars Outlaws has been facing again. So this fandom hasn't grown and changed as much as it should have. So it's a shame. I wouldn't be shocked if we get, okay, we're not calling it Acolyte Season 2, but we're going to call it Rise of the Sith or something, and we still get some of these characters back someday. That's where I'm keeping my hopes on it, and fingers crossed.
I think that, we talked a lot about what the time period gave, and of course, being set towards the end of the High Republic. I mean, there was a lot of good meat on the bone there, and, say what you will about what they did with it or didn't do with it. I think that, there's a lot of story, especially for those who are, really kind of dig the Skywalker saga going, look, we were a season 2 away from this getting super interesting and relevant for that. And I agree with you that, had it gotten a season 2, I think you would have seen some of this stuff ironed out. It's as I was talking in some of the other threads, it's kind of sad when we all now have to kind of watch Disney's bottom line. And although you could, people were wanting to throw fingers at, Headland and some of the, it's like, yes, but the decision to allot that kind of money, especially to maybe a first time, and you go, look, that was also done at a time when, everybody was just throwing money right and left. And just look what Netflix did for a long time, where it's like even somebody with half an idea, oh yeah, we've greenlit that. So, it's one thing that I think if they would said you only have, like sometimes we talk about creativity with constraints. And I think that, had it been greenlit now, I think you would have gotten, it would have been a little different. And maybe they should have shot some of it in the volume, maybe not. But at the end of the day, when it was given that go, it was a much different time in the world of streaming, and it's not something like we're talking about 20 years ago. Things change in this business pretty fast. And, what you saw at the end was, like I said, a lot of it had to do with the mindset at the time, and Disney's not shy about, scuttling things that, even some things that have made money, and I always go back to Disney Infinity, it made money, but it didn't spend it that wisely, and it didn't make enough for the powers that be, and they canceled an entire, they ditched an entire studio along with the product. So it is one of those things where I think there's enough story there. And I think a lot of creators would say, like, well, just tell me, it's like, give me the budgets and give me some parameters and we'll go. But if you're going to change your story after I'm done, then it almost sounds like they were a little hamstrung from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, you're treading into to long take review territory, which we talk a lot about. It is funny that to be a huge fan of something like Star Wars or just movies in general, that you end up following the business. I mean, think of the fact a lot of us watch shareholder meetings or watch notes of shareholder meetings, which is bizarre and strange, but it's how these things work now. And Disney is still in a retooling across all the major entertainment companies. You saw this huge investment in streaming because it felt like the future, and it landed at the moment of the pandemic when everybody was home and had the money to have 4 or 5 of these streaming services going in their home. And now I assume both of us, I can say me, I assume you, we kind of go on and off these things. I don't have a subscription to all of them. Oh, I'll pick up Peacock for the Olympics, but then I'm going to ditch it, as soon as the Olympics is over, as soon as I get that 1 month done, which is called churn, right? And so the increased churn level, I was joking during Accolade with some of our friends about how you could tell who pays the higher money for the ad-free version, because they would be like, done, it was so good. And you'd be like, I still have 15 minutes left. But, the cost increases are real, and they're pushing people to the ad tiers and so on, because they need to be making more money. And that just means fewer of these shows. Star Wars is no different than Marvel, right? Marvel, they're cutting way back. Where I'm enjoying Agatha right now, but I think that's, going to be the last one for a little while in that camp as well. And Peacock and Paramount Plus and even Max are all looking for ways to cut costs. And Netflix, like you mentioned, Netflix used to, roll in and pay for anything, but now they're being a little stingier. And it stinks because we all do love these things because of the creativity and because we think of storytelling. But unfortunately, they're businesses at the end of the day. And at D23, you heard all those big announcements about the theme parks, because I think Disney's realizing, we got to shore up our kind of business down there, because Florida has hurt that. And, at the end of the day, the mouse has deep pockets, but not infinite pockets. So they're trying to balance each of those kind of quadrants of their business. And that's going to be cheaper Star Wars and whatever television products. But something like Lego animated series, these are pretty cheap. And if you do it right, they're pretty darn fun and can be a kind of mainstay alongside whatever other products we're getting. So I think there's still a lesson that if you create something good and create something fun, there's space for it. And Iger's got money for it if it comes in at the right price point, like you said.
And it's also interesting that Rebuilding the Galaxy came when it did. Now, this is something I don't think they could have foreseen a while back, but, after Acolyte, I start thinking about, like, Skeleton Crew, right? I'm like, well, it seems like some things are eating their own when it comes to Acolyte. I'm like, do we want to put another thing out there? And sometimes you just feel as a fan, you go, just hold back, because you're you get a little protective of the franchise, and you go, like, wow, for good or bad, I would just rather, do you want them to put out anything? So it's interesting that Rebuilding the Galaxy kind of comes out as almost like this. People are going to call it a palate cleanser, and that's not the word I want to use, but it's interesting with its mix of characters and the fact that it's Lego. It's almost like, and disguised as sort of a series, because we've had Lego specials, one-offs before. I don't think I've even seen all of them before, but not since, the Freemakers have we seen something episodic like this. And it was kind of an interesting, I think the second time I watched it through, I was like, oh, it's amazing what it's like. Here, try this. It's almost like, and with some of the lines that are in it, it's almost sort of like they can kind of get away with kind of saying some things back because it's Lego. It's almost like, like when the Muppets or, puppets get away with saying some things because it's like, well, it's the puppet talking. It's, or in this case, you've got the harmless Legos talking back. And, I think I'm going to be kind of sitting on that "I'm cranky now" line for a while, because that's very interesting that, Lego may get to do something. I mean, Lego gets to do some things that they can't do otherwise, but it's interesting that the Lego story gets to do stuff maybe that other animation and live action don't get to do. And it's interesting about the license and the rope that they have.
Yeah, and I'm gonna play some of my old man cards to say that it's very funny how they kind of almost accidentally fell into this Lego Star Wars brand being so popular. Obviously, the Lego sets just are celebrating their 25th anniversary alongside Phantom Menace. That's when we started to get Star Wars Lego sets, meaning the physical toys. But it wasn't till Revenge of the Sith, and I will say my personal story, I was, I'd gone out to the equivalent of Midnight Madness for Revenge of the Sith. I'd picked up a few things, and then my roommate and I were at here in Boston, it's the Prudential Center, is kind of this big indoor mall, kind of touristy trap. It's no longer there, but they had a GameStop. I actually think they had two at one point.
Wow.
And I was inside there and I picked up the Lego Star Wars video game, and I was like, what the heck is this thing? And kind of checked it out. The price was pretty cheap. I don't think it was used because it hadn't been around long enough, and gave it a play. And it kind of started this whole big thing that turned into a wildly successful video game franchise across so many different properties. I can't even count how many Lego video games I've played at this point. But it also started up what you're talking about, which is this kind of silly brand of humor, which was allowed to be, I've always interpreted it, and I think some of the creators have said, it is, if you're a kid and you pull out the Lego sets and you build whatever kind of adventure you want, that's what they're putting on screen. And it doesn't have to be canon, and it doesn't have to be, follow a lot of those rules, because I think Lucasfilm has wisely said it is always just, what would a kid picking up their Lego toys do? And maybe Admiral Akbar would be the clone troopers, and maybe, and I think this particular one is pushing it a little even further than it's been before, but it's like, let's just have fun and not worry about these questions. The comparison I would make, from recent memory, is Deadpool and Wolverine, which is Marvel's version of like, look, everybody is getting tired of the franchise installments that require tons and tons of homework, which you can't enjoy unless you've seen, numbers 1 through 10 on this list. And so Deadpool comes in and says, let's just tease people. Let's have fun with it. Let's admit some of our movies haven't been so great lately. Let's, make a giant moment out of a cameo from a movie maybe, a third of this audience was even old enough to see, let alone did they go see it. And that becomes a kind of winking, nodding way to acknowledge, yeah, sometimes we strike gold and sometimes we swing and a miss, but it's all fun. And if you were here the whole time, let's kind of celebrate that. And that's how I took Rebuild the Galaxy, right? That they can make these jokes. You can have Dr. Evison say, he likes you. I like you too. And like, if you get it and you can just crack up and enjoy it. And, we'll put Zori Bliss in the background of that scene. We'll have a destroyer droid serving blue milk and we can all just laugh and have a good time and not worry about it seriously. It feels like with my screen name and my presence that I shouldn't like this because it's Ion canon. It's like everything should be canon. It's like, no, let's just let it be silly and let it have fun. And I think this is very much in line with the Star Wars Lego brand and things like Family Guy Star Wars and Robot Chicken Star Wars, which came out at the end of Lucas's ownership of the property. But we're always like, let's just have a good time. And if it makes you laugh, then do it. I mean, I think those Robot Chicken guys proved, heck, they built a whole show with George Lucas because he had so much fun with it that, is somewhere in the vault and never will see the light of day. But it is like a good time just to laugh and not take it so seriously as something like The Acolyte almost requires you to do because it's live action and it's such a part of canon.
Yeah, and that is the thing with live action where it's like everything, and you could say with the animation as well, it's like everything on screen, once it gets live action, right, and you realize everything is canon, from the outfits to the locations to, what's the name of the planet? Don't tell us the name of the planet. We'll be upset about it because it's like it's something new. But here it's sort of like, even when they kind of came up with the the name of the planet Vanessa, and it was simply created for the series, it is kind of fun. And it's interesting that I think when I first heard about it, I don't think I saw the last Lego holiday special, and I forget which one it was. I think I saw the first one, then the second one, because I think sometimes I might come into that kind of going, okay, it'll be there whenever I want to fire it up, but I'm not in a big hurry. But I do think that, I kind of started seeing some of the review podcasts kind of trickle in, and I think that's when I kind of like about a few minutes in, or like about just very much early into it, I was like, okay, there's something that I kind of need to pay a little more attention to, and I kind of go back and then watch it again. But I would say that for something that we just finished talking about, as far as like it's not canon, it's they can get away with a lot of things. I was really surprised by the story, and one aspect we could probably talk a little more about, but I thought it was like, what they did, there was some serious things that happened to this and that the characters have to deal with. But I do feel that, for the time that they had, these characters were pretty well fleshed out as far as, their motivations and things like that. And I was really kind of happy to see a lot of thought go into this.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I will just say, from my perspective, these are always appointment viewing in my household because, my son has cooled a little on Star Wars over time. I got to get him to Galaxy's Edge again to kind of get that booster shot of Star Wars enthusiasm. But he is, as almost all kids his age are, he's a huge Lego fan, right? Mm-hmm. He lucked his way. He was walking down the sidewalk the other day and found $40 and was like, what do we do? And my wife and I are like, where you found it, there's no place to like go turn it in or go, right? Like, that's just yours. And he just ran off to Target with my wife and bought it was Minecraft in this case, Lego set, because he loves Lego and he loves the creativity. And there's nothing more fun for me as a dad than when he comes downstairs with something he built up in his bedroom and he'll walk me through the armor and the features of the little spaceship he made or whatever it is. So Lego's going to pull him back in. And, on that Friday the 13th, dun, 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 I think my wife had to work late that day. There, for some reason, it was just the kids and I. And I said, guys, whatever dinner you want, let's do it. Friday night's our takeout night. So we got smash burger. We got cheeseburgers, chicken tenders, French fries. And I thought it was going to be like a 1 hour special, like the previous ones have been. But this was a great treat that it was pretty much a movie. We watched all 4 right in a row. Ada, who's 4, kind of wandered out a couple in, which is fine. There was a specific moment that did not please her, and I'll talk about it later. But Henry and I sat and we watched all 4 and we had a great time. And, it's just that perfect kind of family evening. Because I want to earn my Eye on Canon title. So there were 3 previous Lego Star Wars specials kind of the modern era, quote unquote. So there is the Life Day one, which is Rey kind of tumbling through time in a really fun way, but is technically speaking the most we've learned after Rise of Skywalker.
That's
because the canon rules here are that the things that happen are fanciful and playful, but like where the characters are is accurate, right? So Rey was training Finn. So we know Rey trains Finn after Rise of Skywalker, but we don't know the details of that. There was a Halloween one, which was themed around Vader's castle. I believe it was Tales from Vader's Castle, which ties into some comic series Kevin Scott has done. And that largely focuses on Vane, who is the butler who we see in Rogue One, kind of waiting on Vader as Krennic goes to visit him, and tells a story there, but has a really fun story of the Knights of Ren, including Christian Slater as a voice actor coming in and voicing one of the Knights of Ren who kind of gets challenged by Kylo, and it's kind of a Lost Boys story. And then the third and most recent one was Lego Star Wars Summer Vacation, which canonized Weird Al and has Weird Al doing the music for a kind of fun special, in the Star Wars world, kind of themed around summer. So, it's been a pretty steady diet since Disney bought the property, every other year or so. I think the sneaky trick of these is that being very accurate to Lego is super cheap to animate, because you're not talking about fur, you're not talking about hair, you're doing hard plastic surfaces, and they are very well detailed for what they are. But it's, when my kids tune into some really cheap cartoon on Netflix, it's like, dogs that look like this, and it doesn't quite ring true, or something like Cocomelon. You're like, this is, has to cost $3 to animate. Sorry, employees of Cocomelon who are listening. But it's like, to do Lego really well, it's super cheap and it's super easy because it's all polyhedrons or not that complex. And so I think we'll continue to see this. So the 3 of us had a great night. And you know what? Star Wars can be the acolyte and challenge me and push me, or it can just be my 2 kids and I sitting down to watch something silly, and I value that just as much. And I actually really like when the YouTuberazzi doesn't get involved, right? That, I think that's the joy of Young Jedi Adventures. There's nobody doing a takedown of Episode 7 and how it, breaks canon and rah, 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 rah. But then, like, I get to see nerfs, and like we don't really have a canon nerf before, and my kids and I can sit and watch that, and I can smile and laugh. That's perfect for me, and I'm more than happy for Star Wars to be in that valence as well as the fancy canon ones.
One thing I think you're selling it a bit short on the animation, though, is something that I don't think I've ever really noticed before. But what's really pronounced on Servo is the fingerprint on the bricks. And I think that really was one of the things that really kind of turned me. I'm going, okay, that's pretty sharp. I mean, like the shading and the texturing, and of course the mold marks where you see, and you're like, okay, that's really clever. But it really is when I saw fingerprints, and then I started kind of looking for them on other figures, and you go, okay, this is really good. I mean, it's one thing to try to animate, like the Force Lightning, which I thought even was done well for Dev. When I think there's a point where you can see the middle of it sort of like glow and things like that. Okay, that's pretty smart. Or like if they're doing like the water, how they do, where it's the brick and things like that. But or you can see even on I don't know what, like when you looked at Jedi Bob and the cloak hood, like seeing the lines underneath and how it separates from the figure, and the fact that Jedi Bob is like kind of there to remind you that, oh yeah, at one point all the minifigures were yellow. But it's some of that detail that you go in and yeah, this doesn't cost as much, I don't think we'd ever find out, for all the folks, the insider type folks, somebody find out how much a series like this costs, because it's got to be, and then before you start to go like, yes, we're not talking like Five Below pricing, because as we kind of transition into the voice list, this was a pretty big lineup. And we're not even going to talk about one of them because we're only talking about kind of parts 1 and 2.
Sure. Let me just throw in. I think you're absolutely right, and I should correct it. This is inexpensive, but it is not cheap, right? It is. Right. It does not look cheap, and I think that, I'm sure, speaks to hours and lots of sacrifice. So I think you're offering a very good correction on this, that we can come in at a low price point, it seems, but also do really good work. The fingerprint detail is so good, and it reminds me of watching a Wallace and Gromit movie, right, where you see in the little claymation puppets, you see real fingerprints. It's like somebody loves stop motion, and this is all done digitally, but they're gonna have the fun of that, and it's really excellent. So yeah, this cast is really fun, and I have some favorites myself, but to start with the fact they called in a bunch of real actors from the Star Wars universe, I think that's fantastic. I don't know the behind the scenes details, I'll leave that to the real podcasters, but I would imagine they kind of offer it to everybody and they say, this is the price we'll give you, and some say, yeah, that sounds fun, and others say, no thank you at that price. But for one, Anthony Daniels always says yes. I don't think there's been a Lego Star Wars that hasn't had the real C-3PO. And, people get jokey and cynical about Golden Tony, but it's his character. And if he's willing to do it for whatever price, I think he just has to like cross his house to his recording studio. He doesn't even have to go anywhere anymore. So it was great to see. I believe you're going to have to check your list on this. I would say Anthony Daniels.
Correct.
Mark Hamill.
Yes.
Kelly Marie Tran.
Yes.
And Ahmed Best, barely sneaking it into the episodes we're talking about. Those four are kind of the big live action people coming across. And then you welcome in Sam Witwer as Maul, D. Bradley Baker as everything under the sun, but a lot of his roles, right?
By the way, he's Darth Nubs.
Well, because he's Nubs, right? So
I didn't realize that.
Yes, so he maintains his role absolutely as he should. So, and I think that's what I got. Then there are a bunch of returning people who have done these voices before. But did I miss any actual live action actors who came across?
I was just looking, and I would say no. I would say for this one, Mark Hamill, Anthony Daniels, Kelly Marie Tran, Ahmed Best. Yeah, those are the ones that and it's one of those things where we've seen Kelly Marie Tran do this, but I'm like, when you get Mark Hamill in this, and he's got that. I'm sorry, I'm like, I think I need a bumper sticker now since I'm cranky now. That to me was worth it alone.
My wife and son got back from Target just in the scene where he's in the cantina kind of declining the request. And I'm like, it's such a funny moment to work into, but the joke really works. I don't think either of them were invested enough to really care, but it's like, it kind of works and felt like Mark Hamill getting to exercise some of those demons that he's had, where he gets to be like, that's what my character got to do, and kind of joke about that. And it works because we all remember the frustrations he had about Last Jedi, and then get to know that, like, but he turned in his best performance doing that. So definitely gets his cake and eats it too moment, but works all the better because he's there. Spoiling a long take review coming up. We're doing Wild Robot next Monday night. Ooh. And it'll hit the feeds next week. Mark Hamill is like a big credited voice in Wild Robot. I think he gets like 4 lines. Like, he's barely in it. He plays a bear, and it's like, wait, that's where you get the and Mark Hamill for that much, like just that much. So he's been doing animated voices for a long time. Obviously, his best ever is the Joker. So it's really fun to to hear him play as Luke Skywalker a little too.
And I was, as we kind of transition into some of the other cast, I think I was most excited that Bobby Moynihan got to be, Jedi Bob or Jedi Master Bobarian Aphol, because I know from SNL and the SNL parody sketches and the behind the scenes, he's a huge Star Wars fan. Plus, he was also in Star Wars Resistance. And so, and there was even a YouTube video where he was shown kind of like there's a little box in front of him and he's kind of like holding the different Lego figures and he has to identify what they are based on, just kind of feeling, but it's just one of those where I'm like, that there's someone who's certainly having fun. All of them obviously having fun with this, but I love Bobby Moynihan for being in this and having such a prominent role, because that's really fun.
Yeah, and he's been making the rounds. My good friends here in town, the HoloNet Marauders, got him on their show, and
Nice.
They have had this meteoric rise. They work really hard, and they deserve every bit of it as kind of YouTube. But they did a really wonderful job booking him, and I think on that list of credits, people who have VR headsets would also tell you he played a prominent role in one of the VR adventures. I believe the one that's set on Batuu that you can play with your Oculus or your VR headset, which I don't have either of, but I know he's prominent in that. I don't think I've ever shared this on air, but one of my favorite memories from Celebration Chicago, just to talk about your neck of the woods a little, I lost it. I had it for just a second.
You had
when
it for
I said
just a
Chicago.
second.
And then I haven't gotten deep dish lately. I was, people who have seen me at these celebrations know I get like a daily list of where the book signings are and which panels I want to go to, and I'm zipping every which way. And so one of my times crisscrossing the floor, I think running to the Jedi Survivor preview, I just stopped by the celebration stage, and it happened to be the moment that Bobby Moynihan and Donald Faison, both from Star Wars Resistance at the time, came on stage, and they had I don't know if this speaks to how well their autograph was selling, but they had brought a big stack of their 8x10s, and they just like came out going wild on stage. I think Bobby Moynihan was giving Donald Faison a piggyback, and they started doing the Make It Rain with their 8x10s and like throwing them out in the crowd. I think I got one. I don't remember which character, but like we're having the best time, and it was a reminder to me that those two guys are exactly the right age to be mega Star Wars fans. And memorably, Donald Faison had Billy D. Williams on Scrubs one time, and Billy D. Williams says it's Billy D, and Turk goes Lando. And so they are really fun guys to have in amongst the Star Wars celebrities, and I'm so glad, like you said. Jedi Bob is a very funny character, which the deep dive Lego canon would be the Republic gunship that came out at the same time as Attack of the Clones. For some reason, made up a little Jedi figure that came with it, which was just a generic yellow Jedi figure that I think was pictured on the box in the ball turret even. Like, it was very random. And fans called him Jedi Bob. And so then to actually see him get this promotion is actually, I spoke with the HoloNet Marauders. The night I was on their show, they had just announced that Jedi Bob, and they one of their hosts works at the local kind of reseller here in Boston Brick Company, and was like beyond excited. I think that Jedi Bob and this kind of fan driven thing was coming in. So to have it be Jedi Bobby Moynihan, chef's kiss. He walked the red carpet dressed as Jedi Bob. He gets it. He's there. He's one of us. It's so great.
I was also sort of pleasantly surprised to see, our main three protagonists. And, these are, no slouches when you have Gaten Matazzaro from Stranger Things. And then you have Tony Revolori, aka, for me, he's Flash Thompson from the Spider-Man films, but I know he's been in a lot of other things, including, was it the Hotel Budapest. He's
Grand
in
Budapest Hotel. He's the
Budapest
lobby boy.
The lobby boy.
Get your hands off my lobby boy. Absolutely. He will always be the lobby boy to me. But two really fun actors playing characters whose last name is Griebling, which is a nice little Star Wars, then Lego, then Star Wars Lego reference. And both did a great job. I have fallen off my Stranger Things fandom just because, like, is that still a thing? Do they still make that? I don't know. They don't seem to know themselves. But that's no complaint about the actors, any of them. But really fun to have him in Star Wars. And both, it's one thing to have kind of celebrity cameos, but when they do a really good job on the role, then great, like even better.
And, rounding out that, you have, as Jessie Scala, we have Marseille Martin, who I think was a featured player on the Blackish sitcom for a lot of years. And so I really kind of liked the way these three, worked as far as, like, for example, like, three characters brand new to me, but they felt really fleshed out. And, it's like it's very early. They have to establish, they're establishing the sibling relationship and how their characters kind of perceive and their relationship to Jessie. And then all of a sudden, once the temple is kind of, unbuilt or destroyed, as it were, when they get the cornerstone, it's interesting. It's just interesting as well. It's just how that all plays out and how they kind of interact with each other.
Completely agree. It has to be efficient storytelling because you only get 15 minutes of them in the real world, and we need to establish that quickly enough. I love the main characters standing inside the window watching the Modal Notes concert happen, and that kind of brief interaction. Lots of good jokes layered in it, which of course is the goal here, but really efficient character making you like, okay, I get it. I know this relationship between the three. I understand kind of where they're at in their stories, and then let's give them a crazy call to adventure and throw them into the rebuilt galaxy and remix it all.
What's interesting, and I didn't pick up this the first time, of course, once the cornerstone is pulled and everything kind of changes around, and that, you get a lot of places for cameos, but what's, like when they say what's come before us is gone. And at first, when they're like, hey, they're setting up what they're going to have to do. I didn't pick it up early on that Jedi Bob was like, yeah, let's do that. But I really love the fact, and I guess I'll go ahead and in it, that there is no turning back from this. And I think that's what makes, as far as the overall story to me, that's what makes it so interesting, is that there isn't, they can't put it, they can fight what's happening now, like the injustice and the fact that we've got 15 Sith running around, Sith Lego. But it's fascinating that they have broke canon, or they have broken the universe, but it's not going back the same way. All they can do is keep it from getting worse, I guess.
Greg, speaking as a dad of two really big Lego lovers, this is how it works. You have the set, and you build the set, you enjoy the set, and then you eventually say, well, I could smash this up. I could make something new. I have all the pieces. I have the instruction book. I could go back, right?
Right.
I've let Henry smash my Millennium Falcon, my U-Wing, my Ghost. And I say to myself, yeah, they're in the bin. I could rebuild them, but somehow you never go back. You somehow never quite get back to rebuilding them, for better or worse. So it does feel true to that. But I will say, and I know this is spoiling our second episode about these, kind of a surprise that, this continues onward and doesn't end with a big reset. All the other Lego specials have kind of reset back to zero so we can, have the normal galaxy under control. But I do like that this felt like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek. It's like, we're going to remix all the elements, and take these familiar characters, but new actors and a splinter timeline or another dimension so that we really get to do this differently this time and see what happens.
Yeah, and I like I said, I just love that, when you talk about consequences and things like that. Yes, I love how you kind of you put you really edit point. I can't think of it.
Is it late on a Friday night? Are
It
we
is
tired?
late on a
Maybe.
it is late on a Friday night. No, you really nailed it with the fact that it is like once you get done building a big Lego set, and then inevitably either you have to kind of like disassemble it, or or your kids just hey, we're gonna I think it would be better. I think it would be better if it had that and it's amazing that we haven't had X fighters and TIE wings before. We've made it 20 some years into Lego Star Wars, and they haven't just said, what would happen if we just mashed them up? But it's interesting also that they kind of leaned into the fact that Dev and Sig, they were brothers before, but they certainly weren't in this. And so it really, there was like nothing that was, I think, that was kind of sacred or off the table, or especially, like when you get into the later episodes with some of the characters they have together and you go, wow. But I did think one of the funniest little things they didn't go back to was, how about Salacious Crumb being Supreme Chancellor? And I was like, all right, that really shakes things up. But I think that's kind of the funny thing, that you could spend a couple of seconds on that and you don't really have to explain it and you don't really have to go to it, but or like Zori Bliss in the cantina. That's all. It's all we have to do, and it's a lot of aha. And I think also, even if you have a cursory, interest in this, it's fun because now you're starting to look for Easter eggs, or you're starting to look for lines, and everything kind of has, for something that's kind of light, everything has some weight.
Yeah, the characters within the universe have consequences, like you said, and they have emotions, and those emotional stories happen. It is a big game of, the pointing meme and laughing and chuckling at kind of every little thing they change. But for these characters, this is their lived reality, and they take those emotional conflicts seriously. And the fact that, the brothers in particular, I think, give us almost the majority of our drama, and it works really well to have them on opposite sides and kind of go through this journey we see them go on, while you can laugh at Darth Jar Jar and Darth Nubs because it's so unexpected. And the silly ones, the Mos Eisley Marina Cantina made me laugh because it's like, it's so silly and unexpected. And I do love that montage where they're showing the rebuilding kind of actively happening, and Luke Skywalker turns from the trench run into a drive-through that he's just picking up some Gamorrean snacks and all those little things. And tonight when I rewatched it, my 4-year-old was sitting with me, and even she could tell they were all silly, but she's like, wow, it's changing a lot, right? Which tells you that they got it across that this is a big deal for those characters.
Well, and I also think now when you're looking at the Y-wings that are piloted by the Ewok bounty hunters, and you see the wings on the X-wings, and I'm going, I think they fly a little better now with those things on them, because they're certainly maneuvering pretty well. And
in good old-fashioned Star Wars rules, isn't it wonderful that you can go buy those toys right now, as always, right? Like, again, my son went to Target tonight, and I was like, if you can sneak Jedi Bob Starfighter into the cart, do so.
This is your opening.
I don't think that made it in. So, but the TIE Fighter and X-Wing set is out there. And of course, from the very end of these two episodes, the Dark Falcon, which is coming in at a pretty mean 180 at the moment. And I might wait for some clearance, but it's kind of tempting because, sure, it's a big, silly one-off ship, but then you get the Luke Skywalker with the Japor snippet in the open vest. You get the Darth Jar Jar figures. I think Darth Ray is in that one. You can have some fun. So, they're not going to be tops of my list of sets I have to own, but I can see myself picking up a few over time.
Or if we go down to Florida, we can crash Anthony King's home, because he brought that little puppy home from D23.
Oh, that's
as
right.
a giveaway.
Lucky
so you're
guy.
Like, And by the way, Anthony, I think we've been pretty lax on seeing the shots on Instagram. So I think we're going to have to. We're calling out Anthony. Come on, Force Ghost. Let's get some Lego shots going up. Oh, and by the way, how about one of the best lines as they are introducing some of the the Sith Legos, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, Hammerhead, and I was like, okay, that was actually pretty dope.
That was really funny. And, I've always seen that as a Star Wars Generations difference. You can tell if somebody only knows the Kenner names, that they were there in 77. And then those of us who immediately said, come on, it's Moma Naden, are more the Star Wars CCG generation. So,
that is the first time I've heard that name.
I'm sure Sam Tashima is with me, because that card game taught us, and it was all based on the West End RPG too. I think the West End RPG set the names, but wasn't quite as widespread as the card game, which then got us all to know every single name in the galaxy. And Jack Porkins, who also gets a shout out early in the episodes, and some of those.
Hey, I was kind of curious your take, and I don't know whether this has been in some of the other Lego specials, but I really loved the concept of the Force Builder and the Sith Breakers. Has this been something they've talked about before, or did we just get a really rad concept thrown at us?
Good question. I think the Freemakers came closest to this. So the young boy in the Freemaker family, it's been a long time. They're really great, and they're all on Disney Plus. I was just telling my son he needs to watch them. I forget the young boy's first name. It might be Rowan, but that might be the older brother. And he becomes a builder, and it's like it's kind of the equivalent in that universe of being a Jedi. Like, you have the ability to be a builder. But I don't remember Sith Breakers before, and you're right, it's such a silly little extension of Star Wars, and merging it with Lego in this kind of perfect way. And people have heard me on this show before say George Lucas always took it back to the basics. Jedi are selfless, Sith are selfish. What is that except Jedi build and Sith destroy? And it really works to kind of extend it in that way.
Yeah, Rowan learns about the Kyber saber. That's okay.
Yeah,
Xander.
Xander's the older brother.
Okay, all right. I don't think I think I got a little bit into that series and I didn't finish it. I think that's almost worth it to kind of go back.
It's tricky. There are 2 seasons that are real, the Freemaker Adventures, which I think dropped. I think they predate Disney Plus. They dropped on the Disney Channel kind of regularly. And then there's a show called Lego All Stars, which is actually season 3 of the Freemakers. I think the branding hadn't been working, and I think it got put out on YouTube. So I totally missed it as well. Wow. If you feel like you just fell off, it's not entirely your fault.
Oh, one last thing on the canon side. I loved it. Seemed like a throwaway line. I guess you can have more than 2 Sith at one time, which I thought was really super clever. At any rate, I was sitting there just kind of looking at it. As far as we get into episodes 1 and 2, are there some moments that kind of stick out for you?
Definitely. I mean, a lot of really the first episode to me just feels like it has to be set up. So it feels like it does take you a long time to get to the kind of rebuilding. And then across the second episode, you're really spelling that out and you're building it. The standout for me has to be the fight at the end of the second episode where Jedi Bob shows he's a poor lightsaber wielder. But I actually think the pacing of that, where they pull the trick and they lock Darth Rey in the encasement, which is kind of like the Darth Maul thing from the end of Clone Wars, which I also have in Lego somewhere. So I think it's very close. But then the surprise of the Dark Falcon and the Sith that comes out. It's actually some pretty good action, followed by like just this knockout humor that is so funny to see who they chose to be Sith and all of them coming down. And I will say it was the Darth Nubs moment that made my daughter quit that I teased earlier. She did not have the language for it, but she did the not my Star Wars move and just kind of walked away. She's like, no, Nubs would not do that. Nubs is a good guy, and kind of lost interest immediately because how dare they make Darth Nubs.
That's so funny. I loved the space chase, and going from the fact of them being able to reconfigure the ship and changing it and giving it giving it a pod, giving it pod engines, and at one point it's got the AT-ST legs, and then it gets the boat, but going through like the asteroid field, and like I said, I love the remodded Y-wings. I'm like, all right, that's that Lego set out, and I think you may have a buyer on it. But yeah, I just thought it was really well done, and by that time, of course, when Servo, which by the way, let me see, I have his down as well. I did not recognize Michael Cusack from some of the other things he's done. He's an Australian actor. It's got a lot of credits, but I just was like, kind of like, okay, done a lot of stuff. It's interesting, but I like the fact that they gave him a voice for those of us who are big fans of Gonky from Bad Batch. But yeah, I loved that whole sequence there, and it was just really well done, especially with the asteroids and things like that.
Yeah, completely agree. My favorite shout out moment in that is I like when the Ewok Y-wing flips its engines around and then does a 90-degree downward dive.
Yes.
Because who hasn't done that with one of your Y-wing toys, right? Like the engines always can be kind of slipped around, and you play with that and you kind of design what it would look like. My son has done that with Lego Y-wings. I used to do that with my Kenner Y-wing. Like, they all kind of have that flaw that lets you do that, and it's certainly really fun. I didn't recognize that actor either. It felt to me of a piece with Taika Waititi doing IG-11 and Richard Ayoade doing I'm gonna forget what his droid was named, the droid in Mando who's like a bounty hunter, I believe, right?
Is it Z1 or something like that? Zero?
Yeah, zero.
Okay.
And so it is funny that we've grown out from Anthony Daniels, that now it's not just British accents, but it's like all the Commonwealth states of Great Britain. And so we get more, but it totally works, and it's really fun. And just because you brought up Servo, I will say that's the one after we finished that Friday night. My son was like, I got to build a servo. And I was able to on my phone, in a move to me that told me I live in the future. I pulled up the PDF of Jedi Bob's Starfighter on Lego.com.
Ooh.
I zoomed in on the page and sent it to my printer and sent him right upstairs with how to make, his own servo. And he didn't have the right colors, but he came down with like a tie-dye servo that looked awesome. And it made me really proud that, he ran off to do that.
You may need to email me said PDF. I may want to take a stab at it. I was thinking like, oh, I thought he was going to go on eBay and try to find it. Like I was just trying all right, seriously. I don't know. I still have a lot of pieces like that. Let's see, as we kind of wind down, and we definitely are. But that's what I love about the shows. Like, like when we do our normal shows, and you got the notes, and you have the canon connections and all this. This is what's just kind of fun, and I think maybe this is really what we needed at the time we needed, so we can kind of go into Skeleton Crew with sort of like, take a step back, let's everybody take a deep breath and just enjoy the ride. And, that's as someone who is not like, I'm of that age who was around for, the E.T. and the Goonies, but it was just not my thing. And that's where, I think for me, what's going to be the greatest opportunity is to go, look, and maybe this like going into this thing, I don't feel like there was this weight of, oh my gosh, are they going to pull it off? Now I feel like, okay, we all done a reset. We had some fun. It's going to be a holiday type of scenario. Why don't we just relax and kind of cruise out of this year and get ready for whatever's to come next?
I think that's right. And, I made it as a flippant comment before, but it is actually really nice to have some Star Wars that isn't overanalyzed. We do the Greg's List. Nobody forces me to listen to, 8 podcasts analyzing the same hour of a live action show or Bad Batch episode. But I do, and yet, you're not seeing that for Rebuild the Galaxy. You're seeing a few interviews, maybe a couple reactions, but it's really nice. And I've said the same thing about Young Jedi Adventures. Because these are designed for children, there's finally some people who can be like, well, I don't have to come in with my woke detector and my laser eyes and figure out everything that I can yell about and make money off of. People just leave it alone, and that's fantastic. And I do think, I am hopeful that the tide might be turning on some of that monetization of hate, so that when the Skeleton Crew comes along, if it's clear within a couple episodes that it's meant for children, then I hope people are just like, I'll stop. I won't care. I'll just let it be for children and not worry about it. Because, spoiler alert, it's all for children. We can be here, but it's all for children, and it's okay if it's a little less serious and less fun. I mean, it won't be true. The other day, I scrolled past the Facebook post with the Skeleton Crew trailer, and the first comment is like, "Oh, you're just telling me that." I'm like, guys, you don't like Star Wars anymore. Just leave. Don't let the X-wing hit you on the butt on the way out the door, because it's time for some of these people to move on and say not everything Star Wars is for them, and that's okay. But I took a sweet moment and made it sour. It's great in this moment to just be happy and to just enjoy a little fun Star Wars, and that's what Lego provided.
Well, and one of the other reasons why we listen to so many podcasts and we do shout them out is that, when you're listening, and something we have said, it's like when you're listening to a lot of different folks, and when you're, whether you're reading them, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're listening to podcasts, I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that we don't pick up that maybe someone else picks up. And so when you see the threads kind of put together, it does make this great quilt. And you will see points and go, that yeah, I didn't see that, or that makes sense. And some of that, if someone's, if someone's just listening to one type of show or listen to one kind of, YouTube or something like that, I think they're doing themselves a disservice. Or it's like if you're in an echo chamber where I'm like, I don't mind being challenged, but I also like hearing what people say. But, after you've kind of sought out some of these other shows, and you go, I get where they're coming from, and they go, oh, that didn't really hit for you, and then that's when you can kind of go, okay. And at the end of the day, right, just like with this, there are people, like you have said before, that animation is not necessarily something that was ever that really big for you, and some people can just pass on stuff. But then, just like with Clone Wars and me, like Rebels kind of made me go back and watch Clone Wars because, I kind of like that. And one of the things I kind of do like about Skeleton Crew, hello Jude Law, is that one pirate that was in Mandalorian that seemed almost kind of like a throwaway character, a cool character. But I go, there's sort of my anchor point. Like, oh, okay, I can kind of see that. And then you start to go, well, the rest of those pirates look pretty cool. I want to see a couple.
Is that Urkel? He looks cool.
Okay, I might need to see a couple more shots of that before I get completely on board. But hey, I'll take it in stride. But that's when you go, right. So, because like I said, with not really having the big love of the Amblin stuff, okay, the kids will be something that I go, that you, like I said, you kind of come in, but I'm definitely going to give it, I'm not going to come in with baggage and just come in all ready to kind of like, bleh. I'm going, you know what? I don't know if this is a one shot, but this should be fun. And if it has that tone, it's probably going to be okay. And it probably won't shake the universe, but it should be a fun ride. And what else is on? And it's Star Wars. Come on, it's set in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
You just have some fun with it. So,
what are you gonna do? Not watch it? No, give it a try, give it a shout, and then if you hate it, then there's only 2.7 million other shows to watch, right? Back to The Bachelor. I know that's what you're watching.
Then I'll go over to my Photoshop and I'll figure out a way to give me laser eyes, and I'll post it. I'll find a way to get better quality YouTube from me on YouTube. Hello. Yeah, who knew that Zoom, their default is standard, and I'm like, SD, and I was like, who's even making SD video anymore? I'm like, all right. But at any rate. All right, so we'll kind of we'll take this out for now, and we will come back and do the parts 3 and 4 that have some fun people casted and some interesting, story development as it kind of goes through its story. But in the meantime, what have you been? I know it's like you haven't not been podcasting. You're on a mic. I think you have the hardest working mic in podcasting today. But what have you guys been talking about?
Well, I have missed you, just for the record. I podcast on Sunday and Monday, and then it's like a long week until Sunday again. I'm like, usually there's something right in the middle that I pop onto, but I don't. So I continue to kind of chip away at the movies with the long take review under Jen's steady hand and PT's guidance. Dropping in feeds just before, as we're recording this today, is our episode on Megalopolis, which Woo! Whatever you're thinking Megalopolis is, it ain't that, brother. It's something else entirely, and it's kind of shocking and crazy. But it's I'm not even gonna say it's worth going to see. It's probably worth listening to us, even if you don't plan to see it, just to hear our take on what is one of the craziest movies I think I have ever seen in my living memory. And then, like I said, we have recently done. What have we done recently? I don't even remember. We did Beetlejuice. We've gotten that done. We did Alien Romulus, which was a really fun late summer movie. I mean, gosh, I haven't talked to you since July. So if people haven't checked out our show since then, Twisters is out there, and just like any movie, any blockbusters that came out. I missed the Deadpool and Wolverine episode, but Colby filled my shoes, and of course, you know that one is fantastic. So, and we're just hitting award season. So we have Wild Robot, His Three Daughters, which just hit Netflix. And I think we're doing Joker sometime soon, unless the reviews are really, really, really bad. And then we might skip it, but we'll see. But that's where you can find me, or I'm on social media at Ion Cannon, EYEONCANON.
Awesome. All right. And of course, I'd be curious what you out there have to say about Rebuilding the Galaxy. If you have questions or comments, you can always talk to the Breakfast Pack on the socials at Twitter X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, occasionally Hive, at Rebel Base Card. And like I said, I'll be curious. I know that we have, and something like with this, with a binge series, it's all right that it's been a little bit since the get-go. That's the nice thing about not having that episodic. When Skeleton Crew comes out, you do a quick turnaround. But with this and the fact that it's 4 episodes, and even with us, kind of like rewatching some of it again, it's like, okay, I can kind of go back and watch it, and then maybe if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, spoilers, go back and watch it. Or should I say, go back and watch it again, because I think you might catch something you didn't see the first time, especially with how many different things are in there. However, So, we're going to turn it back over to whatever you were listening to. So for Gregory Cass and myself, we now return you to your podcast playlist, already in progress. This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Topps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.
That's it.